She stopped. She looked back. And in an instant, she was transformed into salt. For centuries, this was just a story told from pulpits. A symbol. A warning. But now, something has been found. In the heart of the desert, a human-shaped figure of salt stands, in a place that tradition has pointed to for millennia as the exact spot where Lot's wife disobeyed and was frozen in time. Coincidence? Metaphor? Or a sign preserved by God Himself, for this generation? You will be surprised by this story. Before we continue, answer in the comments. Do you believe that God still gives us signs? Comment. My God is my Savior. It is said that Lot's wife, amidst the chaos, the flight, and divine mercy, stopped. She looked back. And in that instant, she was transformed into a pillar of salt. For generations, this story has been told with reverence and mystery. A simple look. A seemingly small gesture. And a fate sealed forever. Not by chance, but as a symbol. A warning. A warning carved by eternity. Lot's wife has come to represent something beyond disobedience. She has become an icon of what happens when the past holds us more captive than the promise of the future. But now, something extraordinary has surfaced. And this time, it's not an allegory. It's not theory. It's not metaphor. It's real. It's concrete. It's living archaeology. In the deserts of Israel, in a region near the Dead Sea, where the sun burns and the silence weighs, researchers have found something that defies simple explanation. A column of salt. But not just any natural formation. A figure, human. Standing, defined, shaped not by chance, but with forms so surprising that even the most skeptical scientists were silent. That formation stood precisely in the place that, since ancient times, has been identified as the spot where Lot's wife looked back. And in that instant, it was as if time had sighed. As if the dust of millennia had risen to reveal something that eternity insisted on preserving. There was no poetry there. There was petrified memory. No statues made by human hands. But natural testimony, shaped by the earth, preserved by salt, sustained by prophecy. The coincidence between location, form, and meaning cannot be treated lightly. Because when an ancient biblical account meets a modern discovery of such precision, something greater happens. The boundaries between faith and science, between history and belief, begin to dissolve. And a deep, undeniable feeling takes hold. Something transcendent has returned to the surface. But to grasp the full weight of this revelation, one must return. Not just in thought, but in spirit. To the place where it all began. Long ago, in that same region, flourished two cities now shrouded in judgment and mystery, Sodom and Gomorrah. Names that evoke corruption, decadence, rebellion. According to the Bible, their inhabitants exchanged the sacred for disordered desires, abandoned righteousness to embrace depravity. And the cry of their wickedness rose to the heavens. And then, God responded. But even in the midst of imminent destruction, there was grace. Mercy. God sent angels to Lot's house with a clear message. Leave. Flee. Take your family. But don't look back. It was a simple instruction. But charged with heavenly urgency. An invisible line, drawn between salvation and judgment. And then, the moment came. In the last leg of the escape, with the fire behind and hope ahead. She hesitated. She looked back. Perhaps out of longing. Perhaps out of grief. Perhaps because she couldn't leave behind what she once called home. And in that simple gesture, a turn of her head, her fate was sealed. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't blasphemy. It was a silent clinging to the past. A look that revealed where her heart still resided. The path to salvation lay before her. Open. Traced by God's mercy. But she looked back. And in that gaze, the deepest truth was revealed. Her faith was still tied to what was being destroyed. And then came the salt. The freezing. The transformation. Not as cruel punishment, but as eternal testimony. A statue not carved by human hands, but raised by history as a living reminder of the price of divided devotion. In that static figure, time recorded not just a mistake, but a warning. When we hesitate between God's call and the bonds of the past, we can lose both. Over the centuries, many have treated this account as myth, as a moral fable, as a devotional allegory. But time has its own ways of speaking. And sometimes, the earth itself bears witness. At the western end of the Dead Sea, at the foot of Mount Sodom, geologists and archaeologists found this column of salt with a surprisingly human form. Alone. Standing tall. Silent. But crying out with ancient strength. What they saw was not just a geological curiosity. It was an echo of the ages. A symbol that has resurfaced to remind this generation that the choices we make with our hearts shape our destiny. What the archaeologists found there was not sculpture. It was not art. It was nature speaking with a prophetic voice. The formation did not come from the hands of men nor from the talent of a sculptor. It was carved by time, by ages, by winds, by rains. And yet, defying all explanation, it displayed symmetrical, humanly recognizable contours. The figure seemed to wear a tunic, as if standing, as if shaped not by chance, but by intention. The scientific analyses were rigorous. And the results, astonishing. It was pure crystallized salt, mixed with minerals found only in deep layers of the Earth's crust. In other words, that structure had withstood thousands of years of erosion, heat, and weather, remaining standing, untouched. But what was most surprising wasn't its composition. It was its location. The coordinates coincided almost perfectly with the ancient descriptions, oral accounts, writings, and ancient traditions, of the exact spot where Lot's wife had looked back. What, for centuries, had been treated as a simple theological lesson, now echoed in the real geography of the world. And in this convergence between the sacred and the natural, between the ancient text and the physical landscape, something powerful happened. History breathed. Faith took shape. And the invisible became visible. That figure evoked by the faith of generations, now stood before human eyes. Steadfast. Silent. Immobile. But laden with eternal weight. The news spread. But not as a mere scientific event. It crossed borders, broke down barriers between beliefs, religions, and cultures. People didn't come as tourists. They arrived as pilgrims. And before the figure of salt, many wept. Others simply fell silent. There was no need to prove anything. Presence spoke louder than any argument. The silence of the place was more eloquent than any sermon. That figure, sculpted by the solitude of centuries, required no explanation. It begged for contemplation. Religious leaders reacted with reverence. Without triumphalism. Without fanfare. Only with humility. Recognizing that what, for so long, had been interpreted only by faith, now had a presence in the physical world. And what about the scientists? They didn't reject it. They marveled. They studied every inch of the formation. They analyzed its structure, its density, its origin. They asked questions, tested hypotheses. But even the most rigorous skeptics couldn't ignore the statistical improbability that a figure with such human resemblance would appear exactly in the place indicated by the sacred texts, millennia ago. And it was then that something rare happened. There was no division. There was dialogue. A precious space opened up. A common ground where science and faith walked together. Each side with a part of the mystery. Each side enriching the other. A moment of rare convergence. The story of Lot's wife was no longer confined to the text. Now, she inhabited the visible, the tangible, the eternal. In a world so fragmented, so skeptical, so divided, something emerged that spoke to both sides. And in this place, amid the rocks, sand, and salt, people stopped not because they were forced to believe, but because something within them recognized the weight of what they were witnessing. But even amidst the scientific analysis, the sincere tears, and the silent astonishment, there is a deeper current running beneath the surface of this discovery. Because what lies at the foot of Mount Sodom is not just a geological wonder. It is not just a curiosity or a relic of ancient faith. It is a message. Silent, yet urgent. Quiet, yet alive. The figure of Lot's wife, preserved in salt, does not scream condemnation. She does not exist merely as a symbol of failure. She is, above all, a monument to the price of hesitation. Her story goes beyond disobedience. It speaks of our struggle, a deeply human one, to let go of what has shaped us, even when God calls us to something new. She looked back. Not out of malice, but out of weakness. And that's where we see ourselves in her. How many times have we heard God's voice saying, "Go. Leave behind. Flee from what destroys you." And yet, we waver. Trenched by comfort, by attachments, by longing for what once defined us. Salt preserves more than form. It preserves the message. It reminds us that partial faith is no faith at all. That obedience delayed is disobedience in disguise. That there are moments, rare, holy, decisive, when a single gesture defines everything. That woman is not just a witness to the destruction of Sodom. She is a witness to the weight of a choice. Salvation isn't just about the path ahead. It also involves what we must leave behind. It's easy to read the story of Lot's wife and keep her at a distance. Seeing her as a warning, a figure from ancient times, marked by choices we thought we'd never make. But, when we stop long enough to feel the weight of what she experienced, something begins to shift. We stop seeing her as a stranger, and begin to see ourselves in her. Haven't we all stopped somewhere along the way? Haven't we all looked back? Even though we knew the right path was to move forward. How many wounds do we carry for longer than we should? How many times do we return, emotionally and spiritually, to places that no longer serve us? To patterns that consume us, to memories that seem safer than the unknown ahead. Lot's wife wasn't evil. She didn't defy God with rebellion. She was human. And it is precisely this humanity, this pain, this hesitation, this attachment, that makes her story resonate so deeply. It reflects something universal. The tension between letting go and staying. Between moving on and looking back. Between trusting or resisting. That pillar of salt in the desert isn't just an archaeological curiosity. It's a mirror. Silent. Steadfast. Unmoving. And yet, more honest than any sermon. He doesn't accuse us. He just is. And because he is, he makes us see. What began as a scientific discovery, has transformed into something much deeper. More beautiful. More divine. The land around that pillar, once dry, forgotten, silent, has become holy ground. And the people who come there aren't looking for a spectacle. They're looking for answers. Purpose. Forgiveness. Renewal. Many come without knowing what they're looking for. And they weep without understanding why. Others kneel, where before they only lectured. Because, sometimes, silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. And that pillar still speaks. Families have been reunited. Hearts have been restored. Lives have been transformed. That place is no longer a dot on the map. It's a movement. Where faith isn't just remembered. It's lived. There, where before there was only judgment. Now there is an invitation. The desert is blooming with something eternal. Many think the story ends with the pillar, with science, with wonder. But, what if that's just the beginning? Researchers continue their work. Mapping. Measuring. Studying. Publishing. Debating. But while the world discusses the data, those who walked that ground feel something greater. Because whoever looks into the eyes of that figure molded in salt doesn't just find science. They find certainty. They find peace. They find a calling. It's not about proving a biblical verse is true. It's about awakening a truth that already lives within us. This isn't just her story. It's ours too. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some exist to touch us. To remind us. To wake us up. The message was never one of condemnation. It has always been about love. God's warnings are not threats. They are calls. Outstretched hands. Amidst the smoke. Amidst the pain. Amidst the rubble of a former life. Whispering tenderly. Come with me. There's more ahead than all that you're leaving behind. Lot's wife didn't know what awaited her in the hills. She only saw what she was losing. And in that moment, she lost everything. But you're still walking. You're still hearing the call. Maybe you're not running from the literal fire. But you're leaving behind something that's held you back for too long. Something that's kept you small, hurt, or paralyzed. Maybe it's time to let go. The same voice that called Lot still calls today. Not with thunder. Not with fear. But with truth, tenderness, and grace. There is something sacred ahead. But to get there, we can't look back. So the question now isn't about an ancient story. It's about you. What is God asking you to let go of? What fragments of the past still ask for your last look? Let this silhouette of salt, shaped by time and divine mercy, speak to your soul. Not to scare you, but to awaken you. Lift your eyes. From the dust, to the sky. From yesterday, to eternity. Because moving forward is the only path that leads to the promise. If you enjoyed this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. You might transform the life of someone you love. Comment on your thoughts or leave suggestions for future videos in the comments. This message is not the end. It's just the beginning. We are with you on this journey. May God bless you.